everybody, welcome to another episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Blacks only, that's right, blacks only. The only show in South African television. Not that I'm on TV, but hey, who knows? Maybe I'm professing something, but the only show on your screens which brings you issues from, yes, black South Africans, but makes the point that the real diversity between us isn't racial and it isn't gender, but it's actual intellectual diversity. On this show, you will find a veritable mix of who's who, from your anarchists to your classical liberals, your libertarians, and hey, even a few lefties every now and then when they're brave enough to come on. Guys, I'm not going to waffle on and waste too much time, except to say, remember, you can support the show by becoming a friend of the IRR. With your support, I'll be able to afford changing some of my background logo so it can actually reflect the new name change to the show, to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Remember, you can you can become a friend of the IRR, our crowdfunding campaign, by SMSing your name to 32823. An SMS will cost you R1. Terms and conditions to apply. Or hey, send us that 90 rands a month via online debit order, where you can go to irr.org.za/join and sign up a monthly debit order there. Guys, remember, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so that you're always reminded on the show. I actually need to sneeze. Oh, there we go. Got it? That was a very cute sneeze, wasn't it? Yes, it was very controlled. Your favorite fat boy has that magical skill. Speaking about magical skills, the people in the studio have a magical patience with me. Let me quickly welcome them onto the show. We have Mr. Dumo Denga, who is the host of the Man Patria podcast. Good listening. I really recommend that you guys listen to that. Dumo, hello.
Hey, how are you? And thanks for having me, man.
Hey, man, sure thing. And of course, we've got Mr. Zach Mtembu, a student from the Wits University of, Wits Watertrand. That's right. I butchered that one, but nonetheless, Zakele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Guys, we're going to hop straight into this one, guys. Word of caution, this will be a rather short episode. Don't ask me why. Fellas, it's been an interesting week. We had a situation where, I'm going to begin with the coronavirus, but panic, everybody, panic, run around, flail around, we're all going to die. The media have basically said this will be the apocalypse to a large extent, but is it really, Dumo? Are we going to all die from this, or do we just need a few calmer heads?
Well, I don't think we're all going to die from it, but if you look at its infection rates and mortality rates compared to general flu, for example, I mean, it's much lower. And also, look, the media, they need to create sensation. They need the ad revenue clicks. They need all of that, the Google search, AdWords, everything like that. So it helps their business. So I think they stand a lot to benefit from the panic, in my opinion.
Zakele, coronavirus, click here to find out whether you're going to die.
Yeah. I don't think we're all going to die. I think the panic is exactly just that, as Utumo said, really. Like, human beings have had viruses for the longest of times, and even the worst ones, at least in history, haven't at least, managed to wipe us off the face of the earth, because we're still here alive and kicking. So yeah, I don't think we're gonna die. And just like Utumo said, the infection rate of this current virus is even lower than the general flu, right? So if you aren't wearing a mask every winter during flu season, then I don't think that you have any reason to worry, outside of just generally being hygienic and doing things that you should normally do as a human being who lives in a virus infested world.
And guys, I think this is the point I was trying to also get at online, because I came under a lot of flack by all sorts of know-it-all types and the, hey, you're wrong, Big Daddy, blah, 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 blah types. I basically made a point that what's happened so far is that the South African government has appropriated for itself. Whether you believe it should or shouldn't is not the debate, but essentially it has appropriated for itself the powers, if you will, to be the sole agency, the sole agent that deals with all things coronavirus related. In fact, the minister himself said that the private sector can't even test for this, and I stand corrected, but I do think he said the private sector can't even test for the virus. It should only be the state that does this. Now, with it having appropriated all of this for itself and lulled the public into a sense of, okay, they've got it, they got it covered, it seemed a bit funny then that an individual flying in from Italy, a country that already has lockdown neighborhoods, soldiers on the streets, quarantines, you name it. It seemed a bit weird that a flight coming from that part of the world, and the individuals therefore then coming back into a port of entry, in this case, the OR Tambo International Airport, that the officials there didn't really even have a regime of questions to ask people coming from that part of the world around maybe, were you in a part of Italy that had a quarantine, for example? Did you find yourself in high, densely packed parts of the world where maybe you came across someone who had the virus, coughed on you, or whatever the case? Like, it didn't seem that even those basic questions were being asked of people. Now, again, let me clarify. I'm not saying officials at ports of entry should be, grabbing you and, shoving a thermometer up your butt and, literally infringing on your rights. No, that's not the argument I'm making. But the argument I'm trying to get across here is surely information is key for a government that says it's taking it upon itself to deal with this crisis. So that same official at OR, at least sending a message saying, guys, so-and-so indicated they may have been in the area. Can you alert your local structures, local clinics, whatever the case may be? He may be someone who comes in with the virus. Am I being unreasonable, guys? Maybe I'm the one who's not making logic here because I was told that I'm not an expert. I shouldn't say stuff like this. How am I wrong, though?
I don't think you are, and I don't know how the government are experts as well, to be honest. I think logically, there are precautions that probably the airport could take. For example, I mean, if a guy lands in and this flight is coming from Italy, or there was a connecting flight from Italy or something, maybe you can just ask these guys, just to fill in a quick questionnaire, just give us your passenger details and everything like that, and then you can just pass this on to the government should they want to use it. I don't know if they will, but at least then if the government messes up, one person can say, but we provided this information to the government and they didn't want to use it. So I think that there were precautions that they could have taken, even if they couldn't spot the virus. But just get some information. Because you may never know if it'll be helpful or not in the long run.
Zakele, the point I also made, and some people are making, thinking that they're rebutting what I'm saying, is yes, they're right. The virus itself has an incubation period of about up to 2 weeks. So someone could literally walk past, not looking sick, not even having a fever. So again, one's not saying that, OR Tambo officials need to have some magical ability to spot the disease. That's not the argument here. The simple argument is to say, if you have appropriated for yourself as government the sole responsibility of addressing this issue, and it may be a pandemic, an outbreak, then surely just knowing that there are some individuals with higher risk factors allows you to respond quicker. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think this virus has to be the biggest indictment on governments all across the world, right? Because they give themselves this job of containing the virus. They failed on their own terms, and they essentially don't want to be critiqued on failing on a job that nobody gave them but themselves.
That's the irony.
And it's the greatest irony ever. So I agree with your information aspect of it. If a government will say that it provides healthcare for people, right, then at the very least it should be able to screen these people, and by screening it need not even give a tender to some cater to provide machines, really.
Man, I feel like them caters are like, shush, you're messing it up for us, man. Why's the cater showing that shit?
But all they could do, as Dumo said, just fill out a questionnaire. So essentially, so it could be easier, right, for the various health services across the nation to not only track people who may have come from these areas, but even I as an individual, if said information could be put up on a publicly accessible
again,
platform.
not people's names where they live. But we're not asking for a surveillance state, but just some information. Say in this area, there's X amount of people who may have the virus,
so that me as an individual can take the necessary precautions. Because I don't think that governments again are showing their inefficient nature really by trying to contain the virus instead of spending all those resources in research and trying to defeat the virus, right? But any excuse really to be authoritarian, governments will most surely take, as ours has proven so by their unwillingness to let any private sector handle the virus. Really, they're taking cues from China, who are huge friends with them, because China also has been very skeptical to work not only with other governments but let alone private labs or research labs who may be interested in providing services.
Sorry, you made the point about them, even being douchebags towards the World Health Organization when they came to China.
Yeah, because that's the Chinese government. When the virus first came out, they were already dealing with the doctors who were trying to show that there's like a new strain of virus that just got discovered here. But like it's the nature of all governments, really. They want to exert power over individual liberties at every avenue that they can find, because that is where their power stems from, by exercising authority, by depriving people of their liberty, which is why, as I said, and a lot of people who want governments to quarantine people are misguided, really, because if you give the government a reason that if you're sick they can take away your liberty, then they can just come to you and say that you're sick and take away your liberty, and you can have no recourse outside of it, really, because it will be worse. They will be doing it for health reasons or security reasons.
I mean, you raised the critical point, and I think I wanted to end off on this one. It did seem as though governments are very trigger happy in accepting more power to be able to shut down things and say, yes, but we told you we're the only ones who are responsible for dealing with this, so shut up and stay in your home, because there'll be an armed guard at your door who'll shoot you dead if you even try and come out. Anyway, I'm being hypothetical, but to a large extent, if you look at other parts of the world, this is happening. But guys, maybe as a final question on this one, because I know my comments are going to be lit after this. Guys, if you disagree with me or anybody here, throw it in the comments, harass me on Twitter. We'll meet on those Twitter streets, as Malema calls them. But there is a story to be said here about the insatiable desire of a government which has already indicated that it wants to control all healthcare in the country anyway via the proposed national health insurance. This is almost a litmus test for them, isn't it, to say, how far can we push these people to control everything of theirs? Dumo?
Yeah, maybe I think that'll probably be, it's a good way to see, but I don't even think they need to do that, because there was actually a study that they did, a little experiment of this NHI, and it failed completely. They didn't even release the results. So I don't know why they're going to try this again. And I don't want to say they hope they fail in this one, but I think they most likely are going to be honest. And really, if the government really, they keep proving to us that they are not capable of doing it.
Yep.
But for some reason, they just stubborn, and that's how I see it.
I agree with them. No, even like they've failed for the mere fact that there's a case that got discovered, not because they detected it, but because someone actually had the sanity to take themselves to a health professional. Means that they've already failed. They've failed on their terms, but because it's government, they have no performance review, just like everyone else in the world. When in the markets, when you fail, your business usually shuts down. But in government, you have to wait 5 more years and hope and pray that everyone else thinks as we do. But government has failed, and this, as I said, it's the biggest indictment on every state across the world, really, which has given itself the jobs that should be left to individuals and their families and their own private organizations.
And for me, that was the kicker. That was the actual kicker. That this person, thank you God, actually had the sense to say, oh, I'm feeling a bit queasy. I wasn't a part of the world that had this. Let me approach healthcare because it could be this. Now imagine, for whatever reason, that person didn't have that impulse in them. And the same situation happened where, and it's probably currently happening as we speak, where people are just walking in, maybe one of them isn't self-aware and, yes, isn't showing symptoms at the point of maybe passing a point of entry, gets home, gets really ill, but doesn't make the connection that, hey, it could be this very... the coronavirus, whatever the case may be. And my thing is, not everybody acts in that rational way. And you could have a situation where, because you are not passing information on to relevant agencies that you've deemed are solely responsible for something, you can have someone literally cause quite a big mess in parts of this country which are not very well equipped to deal with what we're hearing is a very highly communicable disease like this one. So that's the only point I was making. And I don't know, if I'm still not an expert in your books, then screw it, I don't care. Guys, let's move on a little bit as they gnash their teeth in anger. Let's end off here, maybe. There's a very interesting case in Cape Town, and I'm not going to set the whole scene. I'll probably just put a link to a news article so you can see the background to it. But basically, about 200 or so foreign nationals descended on the city centre in Cape Town, initially demanding at the offices of the United Nations that they be taken to Canada and America and Australia, because, you know, in South Africa they're being attacked every single day, and this particular group, can't stand it. They demand the UN put them onto planes and fly them to these first world countries. Now, you can obviously imagine that the UN, I don't think, has the mandate to do something like this, let alone if you're storming their offices and, you know, causing a ruckus, essentially, in that office space. That's not how rational people respond to this. And obviously, law enforcement was called. This was back late last year. Law enforcement was called, and then that caused the scene now, because, you know, police are trying to move people. They don't want to be moved. Big scenes. The media, of course, were there to cover, you know, I mean, the images. I'll put one up. I'm laughing because I can really have sort of mental image of it. I'll put an image up here of a homie, like, you know, like sorry, what are they called now? Little people. Back now they used to call them midgets, but, you know, a little person being dragged away. Super funny, yes. But other images too of like children being, you know, wrenched from parents, you know, that sort of sob stuff. That same group then flees into a nearby church, with a lot of them still sort of milling around and milling about outside. And then you had the standoff essentially for months as this thing played out in court. Recently, the court then says, guys, City of Cape Town, you can move these people. This is untenable for various reasons. One, you might say it's unseemly. No one wants to see that in the public. But two, it actually was posing a health hazard. You can't have 150 plus people living in a very cramped space outside a church with no ablution facilities, with no water. Obviously, there's no electricity, so some people are cooking with open flames, etc., etc. So I've set the scene for you guys. But here's where it got interesting. You had this group of these 150 plus or so foreign nationals demanding, almost in an entitled way, and that's the question I want to put to you guys, that they must be catered for, because, you know, they're tired of living in South Africa. And then you have another group of, foreign nationals too, who in that very part of Cape Town, Green Market Square, very famous trading and informal markets area, those guys are like, but I don't get what you guys are saying. We are job creators. We have these stalls. We're trading. We're making very serious bank because of the tourism. But with you guys now crowding this place, making it unseemly, unhygienic, the tourists are not coming here. So you, fellow foreign nationals, are messing things for us. And we don't really understand what you're saying, because we live in the very communities that you're saying are chasing us away. Guys, question. Am I being unfair? Am I being the xenophobic South African in saying that actually these 100 or so foreign nationals were creating a very bad image for immigrants who, generally speaking, and I want you to speak about the characteristics of immigrants, are very hardworking people, creators really, more than takers of anything, if you want to look at it through that lens. Talk to me about that dynamic. Did they create this maybe negative perception of foreign nationals, and are South Africans inherently xenophobic?
So to answer your second question, I don't think South Africans are xenophobic. I think that generally they get along well with other people from other countries as well. I mean, we see that in the townships and so forth, and even in the suburbs as well, where I used to live, and there was a guy there, calls himself my friend, who sells stuff to other black people. So I would say that we generally get along. And then, with those guys that were demanding stuff from the UN, I think you always have those, I'm not going to say bad apples, but there'll always be that small group of people who will end up giving the other foreigners a bad name based on like an entitlement mentality. This is not to say that they are entitled, that they feel entitled. Maybe they are desperate, but it just gives off that impression at the end of the day. And I think that, you know, maybe they can take example from the other foreigners and say, look, I mean, guys, okay, maybe, you know, we are not in a good space right now, but these guys are doing well. Maybe we can just ask them, you know, what do they do? So I think that there's an opportunity for that as well.
Okay, I want to pose something else to you, but similar to this. Don't get me wrong. Being an immigrant is not easy. It can't be easy to leave what you know, the language you speak, the people you grew up with, to settle in a new country. But we do see the data pointing out that immigrants generally are a net positive for the countries that they move into. Why then if you're that guy, that immigrant, you know, who've established a business, you're actually hiring locals in most cases, and you're looking at these guys crowding your trading space and affecting your livelihood, essentially your livelihood, your property rights, your ability to trade, your freedom to trade. How would you view that situation?
As I said, like your question, at least to me, I think goes to the crux of the issue. It's an issue of rights, right? These people were infringing on the rights of others, be they foreigners or be they local South African citizens. If you have your rights infringed upon, it is the duty of the state to have them protected. And I think back to your earlier point about them giving like a bad name to foreigners, I think this is symptomatic of in the shallow level of collectivist thinking, right? Of thinking of foreigners as this group that all act the same, and I guess it's symptomatic really of data analysis, because in data really you try and quantify human beings for you at least to try and make sense of it. But at a social level, it just shows human beings are different. You know, just because we may legit even come from the same house, does not mean that we will have the same views, will act the same way across the world. And I think this shows it more than anything. The city should have dealt with them as individuals. And I think our understanding really of this distinction and first thinking of human beings as being part of groups prior to them being individuals first is very dangerous, because as I said, like just for the mere fact that there are other foreigners who were engaging in productive activity shows that these people, or the group foreigners, it's a very tenuous group really, because it does not represent shared values. So these individuals happen to come from other foreign nations really, were just any criminal individual, just like we have in South Africa, just as we've seen with these xenophobic attacks, right? We don't consider those people to be representative of the entirety of the South African populace. Therefore, I would not think that foreigners who break the law, individuals who break the law and just happen to come from foreign nations, should be representative of every individual who's not South African.
No, you make and I think you genuinely make a solid point, because again, those same guys who I mentioned were traders kind of looked at this and said, yeah, but I'm not oppressed. I don't live this reality that you're saying is endemic to foreigners in this country. You know, I'm a successful businessman. So it's like, get off my Mercedes-Benz. You know, again, I'm being facetious, but I think, you know, Zakele makes a powerful point in that regard. Guys, as we end it off, and I must end it off here, thank you so much. How do the guys reach you on your social media? Let's start with you, Zakele.
Oh, yeah, on Twitter, Zakes_BC, and on Facebook, Zakele Zakes Mtembu, and on Instagram, I think Zakes_.
There we go. Dumo, how do the folks reach you?
Okay, so on Twitter, you can get me at Dumo Denga, or you can get me on the ManPatri account at ManPatri_ZA, on Instagram at Dumo Denga, and also ManPatri_ZA. And yeah, that's more or less it. Or if you want to email me, just email me at dumo@manpatria.com.
Alrighty. Guys, thank you so much once again. And thank you, dear viewer. I nearly said for your patience, but the fellas in the studio will know exactly what I'm talking about as I say that. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can, and I would encourage you to like, share, and comment on the show, whether you're watching it on Facebook or on YouTube. And again, if you are watching it on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so that you're always reminded when these videos go up. Remember to like Big Daddy Liberty on all your social media platforms. Guys, share the show, share it with your friends. Let's grow this platform. And remember, this show, if you like it, might be and likely will be on some of your favorite local radio stations across the country. I'm in negotiations, as they say in government, with various local radio stations about getting this show onto spaces that you are usually on, whether you listen to radio or watch certain TV channels. Sorry, that really went in a weird tangent. I'm back, and in me being back, remember, never trust a commie.